Video games. There are a lot of those. Over 11. Hey, welcome back to Operation Search Quest. Long time no see. Let's get into the subject of this special quest of searching, Steam Next Fest. If you're unfamiliar with what Next Fest is, it's a week-long event that Steam runs several times a year where demos are made available for upcoming unreleased games. So I thought it'd be fun to pull a few demos, give them a whirl, put a video together showing off some of the goods. 10 games is a lot of games. Let's get into it. We're kicking things off with Denizen, self-described as an open-world life simulator. My thoughts were maybe The Sims but first person, Harvest Moon but modern age. Let's check it out. We start in a cozy little studio apartment and get a taste of what the game has to offer in terms of setting up your space. Place furniture, paint, clothes, storage, all that good stuff. I think it works pretty well and feels fairly cozy. Looking at some other stuff we can do, lottery tickets, play a slot game on our phone, and there are references to a fancy casino. Big emphasis on gambling, which is apparently how we socialize here. But if we want to earn money the old-fashioned way, we can work. We can use our job app to find work as a pizza cook, courier driver, or gardener. For this demo, I opted to work as a pizza cook, which has a whole pizza cooking minigame. More than I'd expect for a life sim, but not necessarily something you'll want to do too often. The minigame is fairly mindless in its current state, but I get the impression this game is far from complete, so it could get some additional depth over time. Not the worst foundation to build on. That being said, most of my game footage is this pizza creation. Since the mechanics to end the shift were unclear, I thought it would happen automatically at some point. It did not. Unfortunately, this is kind of where I ran out of stuff to do in what was offered in the demo. I was able to hop in my car, but try as I might using both controller, default keybinds, custom keybinds, I could not get the car to drive at all, which mostly stranded me in the initial little street. I tried wandering away from town and was surprised to find the open roads did lead to things. I found a gas station and then bought and smoked so many cigarettes. And that's the experience with Denizen. I didn't get to try a lot of what the game has to offer. However, I almost look at this demo as more of a tone presentation. You can get a glimpse of the kinds of details they're going to focus on and the general vibe. The final product, or even something they start selling as early access, seems to be quite a ways off, and you definitely need to keep that in mind when assessing the content. My takeaway? I didn't hate this, but I'm saying it's likely not going to be my thing. I like the idea of the game on paper, and I see glimpses of what it could be in the demo, but in order to do the idea justice and deliver on the scope that could make it really cool, I feel like it'd need to be either a really big team like the one working on The Sims, or a really dedicated team working on it for a super long time. Looking at some of the devs' other stuff, I don't know that this will be that for them. Critiques of their other games seem to imply that their finished products are typically fine, but often a little thinner than people would like, and still feel a little incomplete. And thin will not cut it in a life sim where the second the prospect of living a new day is unappealing, it's over. But definitely a neat idea. If someone can deliver on a first-person Sims type game where you physically inhabit the space, or pull the farm life sim genre into a more modern urban setting, that could be really cool. And I will definitely keep an eye out on this one to see if it surprises me. Moving on to Deceive Inc, and a game much closer to release with a much more polished demo. Deceive Inc is a multiplayer game where you explore a large level disguised as an NPC, along with several rival agents also disguised as NPCs, trying to complete objectives and eliminate the other agents. I got a little lost on this one, and a lot of that is my own fault. I hopped into the tutorial that does a decent job of teaching the basics behind the mechanics of the game, what you look like to other players, how to enter and exit your disguise, how to switch disguises and why you'd need to do that, and most importantly, how to complete the objectives to progress the game towards the end. But the thing the tutorial didn't really do a good job of explaining is the main emphasis of a game round. From watching a bit of other people play the game, it seems to me like the main way to win is not to engage in all of these mechanics and complete a heist, though that's certainly something people can challenge themselves to do, but rather locate and eliminate all of the other agents. The mechanics seem like more of a way to prevent stalemates by giving the players something to do that might actually result in them revealing themselves to another agent. With that in mind, I went into my first game trying to slowly work my way to objectives while blending in and finding that to be way too slow to get anything done, and also really boring. Really what I should have been doing is hunting, and actually I did finish out my first game by spotting an agent. You can see this lady in green running down the stairs, then stopping and walking calmly. NPCs will run away from gunfire, but there wasn't really any in this case, and I think the NPCs usually run to a place to cower in fear. This person did not. and boom, an agent. But apparently I wasn't really prepared for a gunfight and ended up dying anyway. Again, watching footage of other people playing this game, people find sniper overwatch positions to hunt from, people set up traps. There are a ton of options to set up a character build around how you want to approach the game. It all seems really cool, but also like something that will depend a ton on a game meta that some people will follow and some people won't. It was all a bit overwhelming to me as someone who isn't a huge multiplayer or battle royale player, but a cool spin on the genre with some really neat ideas. I think this is a game that I will enjoy watching more than playing. Not my thing, but it seems like an awesome game. Moving on to Unscripted, I actually kind of added this one on as a joke. After playing Denizen and seeing the potential there, I wanted to find something a little more life simulatory. Unscripted popped up, which promised to be one of the most ambitious visual novels ever. Having just played As Dusk Falls and absolutely loving it, I figured it'd be worth a shot, even if it seems a little more trashy rom-com focused than dramatic. But you know what? Being in control of trashy rom-com can be fun. So I went into this one with what I think are realistic expectations. I wasn't expecting a cinematic masterpiece, just Hollywood comedy-style writing and characters, and that's exactly what it is. They very quickly established the core friend group, and they're basically what you'd expect them to be. I didn't immediately hate them all, which is good. They pretty quickly introduced the girl that the main character will engage in rom-com shenanigans with. I didn't hate her. I didn't hate the main character. I was able to pair them up in a way that didn't feel creepy, which I liked. And that's about all I can go on. The demo ends very quickly, which raises some concerns about the statement of it being the most ambitious visual novel ever. When playing through the demo, I didn't get the sense that I could steer the direction of things too dramatically. It seemed mostly like little opportunities to increase or decrease the girl's interest in the main character and nothing else. I also question how much of this character's life will be able to live. They've referenced the main character's job as an aspiring Hollywood writer with a pitch meeting in the morning, but nothing else. That doesn't mean it isn't there. The demo just didn't really present a pitch for the scope of the game at all, so who knows. Overall, I'm meh on this one. It didn't really hook me entirely, but it also didn't repel me in any way or do anything offensive. It's not high art by any means, but it's very clearly not trying to be. It's light, it's fluffy, and there's room for stuff like it, and it can be enjoyable to turn your brain off and dive in. I will likely check this one out to see what the scope ends up being when it's released, assuming they ask a reasonable price for it. Moving on to Scene Investigators, which is such a simple and good premise that I'm surprised it hasn't been done more often. You investigate a crime scene, deduce what happened, and answer some questions. Super simple, but people love true crime stuff, and I think a lot of people want to see how they do in a situation where they need to sniff out the truth. Well, that's what this game is. You're presented with a crime scene and zero information, and you need to figure out 5 questions. And I have issues with the way they did it. They set the game up as if you're a crime scene investigator, but then they drop you into the scene with zero context as if you snuck in off the street and are trying to figure out what happened. Literally none of the questions you asked are things a crime scene investigator would need to figure out. Who died is one of them, and there's a chalk outline on the floor where the body was. Why would they not have that information? For that matter, unless we're dealing with some kind of organized crime family, I feel like witness interviews would be able to answer the other questions. Why should I need to search through purses and drawers to figure out who is in chair number 2? First of all, what does that information even get me? And why couldn't we just interview the 4 people who were there who didn't die, 3 of whom are not the murderer? And in this particular situation, is the murder really that much of a mystery with so many witnesses in the room at the time? I feel like this would work better if things were geared more towards motive or gathering evidence for a case against an identified suspect, or a situation where people were coming and going and a body was discovered and it was unclear who the murderer was. As it is, this is deduction for the sake of deduction, and that's kind of a bummer. Also, this really bothers me. Who writes a note like that? Ed is left-handed? Who cares? Do we give him left-handed silverware? Do we have to accommodate that in some way? I feel like Ed can probably figure out how to navigate the place setting on his own. I don't know. This felt like too ham-fisted of a puzzle clue, and it weirdly bothered me. Then when you're all said and done and you submit your guess, they tell you how many questions you got right but don't actually say what happened or go over what you missed. Maybe that's not terrible since it can pull you back in to replay it and see what you missed. That actually did cause me to go through it a second time since I did so poorly my first time around. But while I picked up on a few more things on my second run, I found nothing that caused me to feel like changing any of my answers. I kind of wouldn't mind seeing the developers' logic and how crafty they are, how many leaps they're expecting you to take, at least for one introductory case. Overall, I'm going with meh on this one. I know I've been pretty hard on it, but it's mostly because I had such high expectations going into it. I really wanted it to feel like CSI Simulator, and it's just not that. But at the end of the day, logical deduction stuff is still fun, and I'd totally play this. And it's just up on Kickstarter as of this writing with plenty of development time to go. It'll be interesting to see how this one turns out. Next up, we have Afterimage, which is a Metroidvania game with a huge emphasis on the visuals and presentation. And wow, the music, the animation and the cutscenes, the world design, the foregrounds, the backgrounds, the character animations, the enemy animations, absolutely phenomenal. But what is the actual game? Honestly, fairly standard Metroidvania. You start the game with the ability to run, jump, and swing a sword, and that's it. But you know you'll beef up your arsenal. As you kill enemies, you get experience and level up. Each level you get talent points that you put into this fairly big skill tree. The early parts of the tree have pretty basic stat boosts, increase defense by a point, increase HP by a point, etc. But as you look further along the tree in the territory not available in the demo, it alludes to some more extravagant things. Then apart from that, it's a lot of wandering and getting a bit lost. There's nothing overly wrong with it, other than I notice sometimes there's so much going on with the gorgeous visuals that it becomes hard to see some of the enemies. Something I never quite figured out if they were doing on purpose or not. But I said this before and it really applies to this game. Metroidvania is a really crowded genre. You need to do something pretty cool to stand out in it, and I didn't necessarily get that from this demo, unless it's the visuals. And they certainly do stand out, and the value anyone gets from that will vary from person to person. That may be more than enough to make this your game, and if that's the case, I think that's totally valid and this will be a home run for you. For me, that wasn't quite enough. I needed a gameplay hook. I needed it to feel really good, and it doesn't. It doesn't feel bad, but it also doesn't feel fluid to the point where movement is noticeably enjoyable. I played the demo for an hour, and the powers I saw weren't particularly noteworthy. At the 30-minute mark, I beat a boss and got a dash, which was incredibly overdue. Up to that point, my entire combat strategy was / run away, repeat. That being said, while the dash was very welcome, it certainly doesn't set the game apart from anything else. And after an hour, I was still just rocking that dash with nothing else. Enemy variety was decent. You're able to deflect projectiles by slashing your sword at them, which makes these big knight archer guys kind of fun. But a lot of the combat was pretty straightforward mashing. Bosses were okay, but the fights weren't overly noteworthy, and I didn't come across that many of them early in the game. This one is tough for me. The game didn't do anything wrong, and honestly, watching the footage I recorded back while I write this script is kind of making me want to play it again. It actually looks even more impressive when you're not focusing on playing, and I think it'll evolve nicely as you progress beyond what the demo offered, but the pacing of the demo scared me a little bit. They don't seem like they're in a rush to play their hand, which makes me wonder how much of a hand there is, which I found to be a problem in Metroidvania games. So I'm giving this one a meh, but an optimistic one. I still haven't decided if I want to play this game or not. It's definitely very well done, and I think it will speak to a lot of people and be perfect for them. For me, not sure if it's going to stand out from the pack. And now we move to yet another Zombie Survivors. When I downloaded this one, I thought it was going to be a bullet hell twin stick shooter. I was surprised to discover that it's a Vampire Survivors clone, which in hindsight I probably could have picked up from the title of the game. But you know what? I think I like Vampire Survivor clones. Vampire Survivors itself is a really great game. 20 Minutes Till Dawn is even better, and I played a few others that were okay as well. It's always just fun to see other takes, see what powers people offer and what character builds you can make. So, what makes this one different? The most notable thing is the visual style. A lot of these games are fairly simple 2D graphics. This one has gone 3D. This is both kind of fun and yet also a bit problematic. It took a little bit to get used to parsing what all was going on. They do a smart thing where they'll outline portions of the ground in red or yellow, indicating hazard and action spots that makes them a little easier to pick out amongst the 3D zombies. Ultimately, I think it's a less appealing visual style than nice looking stylized 2D stuff, but it works and gives the game its own style. Then in terms of the builds, there's a lot going on. You start by picking a certain class of military guy, and I should point out that the general style is very military weapons technology. Everything is a weapon or a gadget of some kind, which works well for the vibe they're going for. But each class has a special perk and weapon type specific to them. The SWAT guy, for example, has faster reload times and starts with the pistol. The tank has more hit points, starts with a shotgun. As you play the game, sticking true to the genre, you level up and get a choice of things to upgrade. You can level up your weapon stats or eventually even swap it out for another one. For example, once you max out the SWAT guy's pistol, you can swap it out for an SMG. You can also acquire and eventually upgrade various gadgets. SWAT guy can get a little mounted turret that comes out every once in a while, level it up to make it stronger and lower the cooldown times. But then probably one of the more unique elements of the game, you can bring in the other starting characters to join your party and form a little unit. You won't get their starting bonus. Like if you start with the tank and add the SWAT guy to your group in-game, you don't get the reload speed bonus. But the SWAT guy will have his pistol, which you can then upgrade, and you'll get the ability to add in the turret. On top of that is you unlock meta challenges with each of the characters. You unlock more of their skill tree. Again, using the SWAT guy as our example, if you level him up, you unlock another tier of weapons you can get after the SMG. You can either then swap out for a sniper rifle or an assault rifle. Also, you unlock a new option to acquire attack helicopter runs. And that's kind of where this game actually starts to become pretty cool. The demo only allows for one additional tier for each unit, but placeholder graphics indicate that there are at least 2 more after that. And the money you collect in the game can be used to purchase buffs that apply to all runs. Fairly standard stuff, increase HP, speed, weapon damage, experience gains, etc. But there's a lot of stuff grayed out in the demo. Also more characters, more locations, and it looks like locations level in some way too. What's already here is pretty fun when you get cooking if you like this style of game, and it looks like there's no shortage of content to sprinkle in as you progress. I like that. It's a pretty simple loop, but one that works on me. I actually played quite a bit of this one after getting what I needed for this video just because I wanted to keep going. Definitely saying I liked this one. I don't think it's going to dethrone Vampire Survivors or 20 Minutes Till Dawn for anyone, but what it has going on for it is a whole bunch of stuff to unlock that you haven't already unlocked, unlike the games that you've already played to death. That's enough for me. Next up is Ravenbound, and I'm going to preface this one by saying that I don't have a super firm grasp on exactly how this game works. The demo was timed and there's a lot going on that I think will take time to really learn, but I think that's the point of the game. At its core, Ravenbound is an open world roguelike. You start each run by selecting from a few randomized character builds. In my time, I didn't have a ton of choices to make here since build options are unlocked by spending legacy points or completing meta challenges, and the demo only allowed for enough time to get a tiny taste. But it looks like you'll get a race, a weapon type, and a defense type. Once you enter the world, you are a raven. I mean, that by itself is pretty cool. You kind of get to pick your entry point. As we fly above the world, we can see a story point, which is the blue icon, a side story icon, which is the green icon. These usually get you money to spend on the run. But other than buying healing, I didn't totally figure out what I needed to buy. I'm sure it's there, I just didn't see it. Alternatively, you can just go fight any number of little patrolling units. Killing elite enemies gets you these little fragments. 3 fragments fuse together to earn a card reward. Cards, however, cost mana to actually play. Mana can be obtained in chests, and I think as fragment rewards, maybe? But if you find yourself with a card you don't need or can't afford to play, you can drain the card, which will get you something depending on your character's race. The 2 races I unlocked either got 50 coins or 50 health. So you kill people to unlock rewards. You can also find quite a bit of stuff just in the world, but it's often tainted with hatred. Absorb the hatred and it'll count as a fragment, allowing you to fuse with 1 less fragment, but it'll result in a negative buff that has to be applied, replacing one of your reward options. Combat itself is... I never entirely got the hang of it. You have quick and strong attacks, both of which can be charged. Jumping attacks, kind of a defense bubble parry thing, and a dodge that when timed perfectly will give you a little frenzy bonus. String a bunch of attacks together and you can activate a fury mode that'll do something. I never really figured out how to string all of this together effectively, but I think it's there to be learned. There's a lot going on here and the demo really just gives you a little taste of all of it, and very well done in my opinion. I'm so intrigued to see where this game goes and figure out how to create an actual good run, either by learning the combat, unlocking more card options, or figuring out how to get enough mana to actually use some of the cards, and then balancing hatred with fights, picking what to do first in a run, and managing all of these options. But it all seems like figuring out how to play the game is the game, and I'm here for it. I liked this one, and I'm very much looking forward to its release. Next on the list, Rusted Moss. Rusted Moss is another Metroidvania, but also a twin-stick shooter, also a pretty intense platformer requiring you to utilize a springy bungee cord-like grapple hook to platform around the world. On top of all of that, it takes place in a pretty interesting world. You play as a fae or fairy person, kind of fighting back against humanity and technology. I think the demo skips some of the intro story, or they fill it in as you progress, But from what I gathered, your character attacked a camp or a lab and blew it up. Throughout the game, you encounter humans who are not happy about that, as well as some other mythical creatures that disagree with what you've done. This game is pretty cool. The setting is great, I like the visual style a lot. I think it fits everything that's going on and really pushes the atmosphere they're going for. The hook of the game is really the equal emphasis on tricky platforming while doing the twin stick shooting. It really asks you to do both at the same time fairly often, and that is pretty intense. And actually, it's my biggest hesitation about the game so far. I had trouble getting it to work. Your left hand is on the keyboard driving all of the platform and movement. Your right hand is on the mouse driving all of the aiming and shooting. While playing, I felt really clumsy. It always felt like my left hand was doing too much, and I wasn't able to be as precise as I needed to be, and I had a really hard time focusing on the platform and keeping the crosshair where it needed to be. But is this a problem with the game, or do I just need to get better? Honestly, I don't know. I think I might just need to get better. All that aside, the game is awesome, and I'm very much going to put in the work to see if I can get comfortable with the controls. I really like what they're doing with the story and the world. The grapple stuff seems really fun. The boss fights are fun. They do a pretty good job with checkpoints. The pacing seems really good. I love the look. Basically, everything about this game is great except for the fact that controlling it wasn't comfortable at first, which is kind of a big deal, but potentially one that I can overcome. As it is, I'm 100% playing this one when it comes out. I liked this one a lot. Getting close to the end, next up is Sister's Journey. So, I hate to base all of my opinions on a game by comparing it to another game, but I think it's impossible to talk about Sister's Journey without referencing Celeste, and that both informs a lot of the good things and a lot of the bad things. But let me start off by saying that while this wears its influence on its sleeve, this isn't a Celeste clone. It does a lot of stuff that Celeste doesn't do. It just has the same visual style and challenging platforming with a really forgiving and fast checkpoint system. But on top of the similarities, you also have gun combat, which means boss fights. And 1 point for the game right off the bat, the boss fights are really good. And on the subject of combat, I really appreciate that enemies killed during a life won't respawn when you die during a platforming challenge. So if you find yourself stuck on a really demanding jumping challenge, you don't have to kill the same 5 enemies a million times. The environment puzzles are also excellent. It's a lot of stuff we've seen before. Shoot down platforms, ride falling platforms, find and return fuses to activate machinery, utilize double jumps and air dashes, but very difficult and precise in a way that reminds me a lot of Celeste, which is great. That being said, I had one very big frustration with the game in my time with it that I did not have with Celeste. In Celeste, it always felt very clear what I could do. When I dashed, I knew exactly how far it was possible to go. I always kind of knew where I could get, it was just a matter of executing. In Sister's Journey, I got stuck in a few spots just because it didn't seem like the dash could take me far enough, or a wall jump couldn't get me high enough. In Celeste, I can pump try after try into a really difficult challenge because I usually have a pretty good sense that what I'm trying to do, while difficult, is possible. They lay out the rules of the mechanics pretty intuitively and clearly. You know how far you're going to get if you time things right. You know how fast you're going to get there. It's very clear how many charges of things you've used at all times. In Sister's Journey, there were a couple spots where it wasn't clear the platforming even allowed me to do what I was trying to do. I never really felt like I was in control of my wall jumps. My dashes often seemed too far. I never really got a good grasp on if I should dash at peak jump or the longest distance. It's kind of hard to explain. I just couldn't quite grasp some of the platform logic they expected out of me. And that made it very unclear on a few tough challenge rooms if I should keep trying and trying to perfect a tricky maneuver I was attempting, or if I was just on a complete wrong approach and I should be finding something else entirely to do. Now, you might say that's the whole point, that's the challenge, and you might not be wrong. That could be what they're going for, but I found that 10 minutes into a tough challenge with that lack of clarity really killed the ambition I had to keep trying, which is a thing that Celeste was able to avoid while asking for a similar level of skill from the player. I didn't actually finish the demo of this game. I got to a tough room, spent 10 minutes trying to beat it over and over again. I didn't really feel like what I was trying to do was becoming more clear. The more I tried, the less I liked the feeling of the dash, the less I liked the way the wall jump felt. It felt more like I was wrestling with the mechanics of the game to get them to work, rather than trying to utilize them to perfection, and eventually I moved on. That being said, I'm talking about this one second to last because it's my second favorite demo. About 90% of the demo I played was absolutely phenomenal, and I think this game has what it takes to achieve the same amount of success that Celeste did, which I think is one of the most successful 2D platformers of recent times. I think this game can be that good, but I think its platforming controls and mechanics just need a little bit of tuning and tightening. Just a little to push this one over the edge. I'm saying I liked this game, but if they do tighten that stuff a bit, I think this will be one of the best platformers ever made. Really good game. And that brings us to the last one on the list, Planet of Lana. And this one is a huge surprise. A lot of these games were already on my wish list going into Next Fest, and I'm following a few of them on Twitter. I'd never heard of Planet of Lana before, and I almost didn't download it. The description is kind of just puzzle platformer. There are a lot of good ones out there, but also a lot of really boring ones, so you never know. But I decided to give this one a shot, and it's great. Again, I hate to base the entire impression down to a single game comparison, but this is basically a colorful and more wholesome Limbo. The style of challenges are very similar, and the game feels very much the same to play. I actually looked at one point to make sure this wasn't the next game by the Limbo in Inside people. It very much seems like it could be. But then on top of the comparison to a game that I happen to really like and want more of, the big new hook of this game, other than colors, is the little blobby creature that follows you around. You use it to stand on things, get places you can't, and even as bait in a few situations. You need to keep it alive, and you need to make sure you provide it a path to follow you. It is absolutely not NPC buddy invincible, and it doesn't gain the ability to teleport when it's not on screen. Otherwise, the visuals are phenomenal, the game is a joy to look at, the environmental design is great, the character, creature, and enemy design is great, the sort of future sci-fi fantasy vibe they're going for works really well. The way the demo ends makes it feel like you're just starting on an epic journey. The Steam description says it's an epic saga that stretches across centuries and galaxies, which is very intriguing. I loved everything about this demo. I cannot wait to play this one. I think this one is going to be amazing. I don't know, I feel like I should say more, but there's so little to say. It just worked. It's good. And that's it. 10 games from Next Fest. I really hope you saw something that appealed to you. By the time this video goes up, Next Fest will have ended, but they do it a few times each year. I very much encourage you to keep an eye out for it and try some of the games next time. It's an absolute blast, even if not all the games are right for you. On that note, if you did participate in Next Fest this year, what games did you try? Did you find anything good that you're really excited about, either that was brand new to you or something you already knew about? Are you psyched about any of the games I talked about? Please comment below and spread the word. And, you know, maybe subscribe. Share the video with people you think might like it. You know how this works. It is helpful. The channel is very small and could use any engagement you can offer. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see y'all in the future for more Operation Search Quest. Next time on Operation Search Quest, another game. A different one than this one. Will it get all the same stickers applied to it? Probably not, because it's a different game that does different things. Stay tuned, and thanks for watching.